Hello everybody, Edre here, and today I am going to be doing a review that I am extremely excited for. The new Bright Eyes album, Down in the Weeds Where the World Once Was. This is the first Bright Eyes album since The People's Key back in 2011, so it's been almost a decade. And because I am so anticipating this release, this is one of the few videos that I'm actually setting a premiere for, because quite frankly, I want to build up as much anticipation as possible. But a bit of background with me and Bright Eyes and Connor in general and his music, I quite like it. For example, go back to, when I was in my formative years, I guess, when I was really little, I kind of grew up hearing it from a lot of my family listening to Bright Eyes. So I kind of grew up knowing a lot of Bright Eyes stuff, but it wasn't until a lot later that I really dived deeper into their discography. And I gotta say, my personal taste of their music is a bit different from a lot of others. As you see right there, I have Digital Ash and A Digital Urn, which is arguably my favorite Bright Eyes album. And I also really enjoy 2011's The People's Key quite a bit. But Connor's writing, I've always appreciated. I've always appreciated his more folky, sometimes a little bit spoken word vocals as well. He kind of has always had a bit of a goat sounding, scratchy voice, which I always quite like. And just in general, I have appreciated his artistic, musicianship. After Bright Eyes kind of went on an indefinite hiatus after 2011's The People's Key, Connor would go on to make some solo albums. And perhaps my favorite work that my two favorite albums I think he had put out since The People's Key were probably the Desaparecidos album from, I believe, 2015, and the one he did with Phoebe Bridgers, The Better Oblivion Community. I think Community Center, that is. I obviously like Phoebe Bridgers. I enjoy her album quite a bit that came out this year. So going into this album, Down in the Weeds, I really, I apologize for that. I was really excited. But also a slight bit nervous. Now, you may be thinking, I just said a whole bunch of great stuff about Bright Eyes and about Connor Oberst. Why would I be nervous? Well, the reason I was nervous was because oftentimes when bands go on long hiatuses that last almost a decade, many years, oftentimes when they come back, it's not as great as I think people were expecting. For example, Keen. I really like Keen. Under the Iron Sea, The Perfect Symmetry are some of my favorite albums of the 2000s decade, and they kind of, after a while, went on a hiatus, and then they came back with Cause and Effect last year, which I was not that crazy about. It was a very watered-down version of their sound. Or even a pop-punk band like Blink-182, which I'm not crazy about, but they did have a really fun, youthful energy back in, the late 90s. And when they finally came back with Neighborhoods, it wasn't that great. And I gotta say, going into this, I was a bit nervous that would be the case. But it is a bit different, and the reason it's a bit different, though, is because Connor has been pretty busy. He has kept himself occupied and continuously working on music, so it's not like he has taken a long break from music. No, he has continuously been present in the music scene. So, let's dive into this album. Sorry that was a long intro, I just wanted to get all that out of the way. I guess first off, what style did they go with on this album? They kind of do continue down their more indie, folky roots, but like Digital Ash and A Digital Urn, they do have a good amount of synth and electronic and a bit more synthetic, a lot of affected drum kits, quite a bit, a lot of loops I feel here and there. And I gotta say, since I literally said Digital Ash is my personal favorite album of theirs, I like that. Perhaps the song One and Done, which was released as a single, definitely does give me the most Digital Ash and A Digital Urn vibes with its more affected drum beat. And let me just take a moment to talk about the musicianship here, especially on One and Done. The drumming. I know that, off the top of my head, I cannot remember who the drummer is on this album, but great drumming. And that shines great on both the Mariana, not Marinara, the Mariana Trench and One and Done quite a bit. I really love the drumming and percussion on those tracks specifically. Really strong, adding an extra feel, a good bombastic, really big, huge sound, which I love. I really like the way that turned out. And along with the musicianship on those songs and throughout the entire album, vocally, Connor is on top of his game here. Connor has never been technically one of the greatest singers out there, but he's always had a great tone to his voice. Like I said, he has a very scratchy, kind of very passionate sounding voice, and now that he's older, it sounds more aged, a bit more mature, and he knows how to use it. And really, it's a really emotional voice too. It's a very, 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 very some parts very heartbreaking, and some of the more deep personal songs on this album, Connor's voice gets a little cracky here and there, and it really adds an extra touch to the album. And I know that shows up in pretty much all their albums, but especially on this one now that he's older. Great lyrics. This should be expected. Connor, I think, is one of the greatest lyricists of recent times. He never really disappoints, honestly, and he definitely covers a wide array of topics here. One of the big things he covers is a lot of political and faith-related subjects here. This, I can't really narrow it down to one or two songs because most of the songs on here do tackle those subjects, but perhaps one of the most heartbreaking and really deep and personal songs on this is Hot Car in the Sun. It definitely has a very piano-based instrumental, which I was kind of like thrown off a little at first. But yeah, Hot Car in the Sun definitely does talk a lot about his separation with his wife, and it's a very personal look inside of his life, which I like it. I really do like it when artists take a deep look inside their own life and they're willing to share it with their audience. But I also understand when they aren't willing to. But Connor, I think, has reached a point where he is open, to talk about that. And that's really, it makes the fan feel a bit special, in a way. And I think that is really nice. But overall, lyrically, this album is very strong. No complaints there. I was really satisfied with pretty much all of these lyrics. And, talking about vocals and lyrics, I want to take a little bit more time to talk about the Mariana Trench as well as some other parts of this album. I really do like the chorus of that song a lot, and I really love the backing vocals and harmonies. When I think of Bright Eyes, harmonies doesn't really come to mind. Usually I think of more storytelling and, not really that hard. There's not too many harmonies, really. And I mean, there is, but it's never the main focus. But I will say that chorus is so good and has some great backing vocals with some great harmonies. I just needed to get that out of the way. But diving a bit into the production of this album, I am extremely satisfied with the production a lot. I think it is the wonderful use of strings and horns and keyboards throughout this album just adds an extra layer to the Bright Eyes sound. And I know that they have done this before. I mean, on the People's Key, they added much more, hard, heavy-hitting guitars, a bit more heavier of a sound. On Casadega, they explored more country sounds. And on Digital Astro and Digital Learn, they did bring a lot of those synthesizers and those big, strings and everything. Those are all present in here. But the production actually, I think, turned out the best on some of the more electronic songs, like Pen and Broom, which I enjoyed quite a bit. It has a very electronic drum beat, I always find it fun and entertaining when Bright Eyes tackles that, because they kind of started off very folky, so it is very fun to hear them experiment with these more electronic beats. And there's some great synthesizers throughout that song, as well as there is on One and Done, and just about every other song on this album. But yeah, the great production also really benefited with the drums and percussion of this album. I know I brought that up earlier. But yeah, the percussion on here, perfect. I love the way it sounds. And whoever the drummer is, they know when to hold back, but they also know when to let loose on some of the a lot of the tom drums being rolled on, and it's great. But overall, this album just has a really good variation of sounds. I mean, you get the more acoustic, you get those more songs in there, but you also get a lot of variation, and I really do like that. Oftentimes, I do find that Bright Eyes does usually stick to one sound per album, while kind of changing it up within those boundaries. But this album seems to be a bit more kind of all over the place, and yes, I could see how some people can get a bit thrown off by that, and I could see why that could be a criticism, and I actually do have some criticisms here and there, how some of the track order does feel like you're going from one genre to the next a bit too fast. But for the most part, I have very little complaints because they execute each and every song very well. So, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I want to end this review or at least end up going into the track list with To Death's Heart, which might be my favorite song on this album, or at least one of them. And there is one melody and chord progression towards the end of the song. When you get the little synth lead arpeggios coming in, it reminds me so much of True Love Waits by Radiohead, the original acoustic version, that is, where Johnny Greenwood would, play some stuff on the synthesizer. I love that. I love that song, and I love how it comes across on To Death's Heart. Now, on To Death's Heart, it doesn't come across like they're copying Radiohead or they're doing anything like that. I don't even know if it was intentional. But it came across as genuine and a nice little finishing touch to the song, which was kind of the icing on the cake. So, with that being said, my overall thoughts on this album. Did I enjoy it? I'm sure you already can tell I did. Does it actually compare to their discography? Does it compare to the stuff Connor has been doing since People's Key? Does it compare to the 20, almost 30 years worth of music put out by Connor and Bright Eyes? I think it does. And I would argue that coming from somebody who, I wouldn't say I'm an obsessive fan of Bright Eyes and Connor, but who's always appreciated their work and has gone through and sat through and listened to multiple of Connor's albums with Bright Eyes and without, with Desaparecidos, with Phoebe Bridgers. I could say this is one of my favorite releases from him and from Bright Eyes. Now, I know that this is really, it is a bit early, but, I get the same feeling that I get when I first heard Digital Ash and a Digital Urn, when I first heard I'm Wide Awake This Morning, when I first heard The People's Key, and when I, first heard Paola. So, I really do enjoy this album quite a bit, and that is why, I am extremely satisfied. Like I said, I was a little nervous that, maybe it wasn't going to be as good because it's been a long time since, Bright Eyes have actually put out anything. But I have actually settled on giving this album, get ready, a solid 9 out of 10. Now, anybody that knows my reviews or don't know my reviews, anything above a 5 is good. So a 9 out of 10 is extremely good. I've only given a few other 9s this year, and I think I gave one 10 from the 1975. But yeah, 9 out of 10 is great. That's a great review, which means I am extremely satisfied with this album. I am so glad they did not disappoint. And it's so great hearing Connor work with Bright Eyes again, because his writing, his vocals, everything, they're as good as they ever have been. And I'm so glad. That is it for now. Bright Eyes, Down in the Weeds, where the world... Wait, I hope I'm not getting that. I hope I'm getting that. Yes, where the world once was, not where the earth. That's it, and goodbye.